Hello everyone, Tmmgamer, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another one of my Football Talk videos, a series where I sit down and talk about the goings on in real life football. And this week there's some really interesting stuff to talk about, both nationally and internationally. And the first thing I wanted to talk about has come out in the news in the last couple of days, and it's something that, to be honest, a lot of people were expecting, and that is Steven Gerrard has retired from international football for England. He's relinquished the England captaincy and he's decided to focus on his club career with Liverpool FC. And like I've briefly touched on there, this is something a lot of us were expecting. Seeing him after the World Cup in the press conferences, he looked shattered. He just looked finished with it. He'd put a lot of work under Roy Hodgson. He was Roy Hodgson's captain. He'd gone out there, put his heart and soul into this England qualification campaign and put all of his effort into the qualification for the World Cup. And when we actually got there and got knocked out in the groups, it really did seem to take a lot out of him. And I always felt that now was a good time to end, because he's going to end his career as an England hero, really. He's our third most capped player of all time. He's only one cap behind David Beckham, who actually is our most capped outfield player, and then obviously Peter Shilton holds the record for the most capped player at all, overall. Goalkeeper did very well for England over a number of years, and you have to say you've got to put Steven Gerrard right up there. Made his debut in the year 2000. He's had 14 years of very good international football, I have to say. He's been a good international footballer. I wouldn't say he's had a great career, though, because Steven Gerrard was part of that so-called, in inverted commas, golden generation when you have players like Gary Neville, Ashley Cole, the Gerrards, the Lampards, Beckham, Scholes, and then later on you have players like Rooney coming through to add to that. I still think he was part of our best team in a long time. It was the 2004 Euros, I think it was, under Ericsson, when we had just a fantastic team, and then we got knocked out by Portugal on penalties. And that's the story of Steven Gerrard's international career, really. A lot of promise, a lot of good individual moments. The 5-1 against Germany when he scored a goal. He scored some important goals for us. Scored some real screamers for England as well. But when it actually came to it, that big game, frustrating defeats, penalty shootout defeats, crashing out, unfortunate happenings. And this is basically the problem with England overall, and Steven Gerrard's career in a nutshell really does represent that. A lot of good moments, lot of headlines, few good goals, but at the end of the day, come the big tournament, nothing major happened, and that was really disappointing. But looking at Gerrard on his own, he definitely had a big impact for us. The later he got into his career, the deeper he sat, but I felt he was an important part in introducing this new crop of young players. He would have been a big inspiration for them, and he's definitely going to be really sorely missed, because like I mentioned earlier, there's no doubt he put absolutely everything he had into playing for England. And the brilliant moments didn't come as often as they did for Liverpool, but when you've got people like Harry Redknapp coming out and saying that some players wanted him to get him out of international squads and they didn't want to play at all, you can never accuse Steven Gerrard of that. Every time he stepped onto the field for England, he did his best. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for us every now and again, but that wasn't because of lack of effort on Steven Gerrard's part. He's going to be really hard to replace, and the most pressing issue is who to choose as the new England captain. And unfortunately, there's not really a huge number of candidates. When you see Gary Cahill is the second favourite with the bookies to be captain, that's when we're a little bit short on the ground of natural leaders in this England side. And the clear favourite, I think best price you could get today was 2-7, is Wayne Rooney. And Wayne Rooney, there's no doubt in my mind, is the best player we have. He's definitely our best player, but is he a captain? I'm not sure. But then again, you're not sure until you give these guys a chance. And when you look at the other opportunities and the other players we could possibly have as our next captain, I don't think Wayne Rooney would be too bad at all. He's a fantastic player. Again, he's somebody with great work rate. You can never accuse Wayne Rooney of not putting an effort in. Sometimes the goals have dried up, but he is a player who always runs around, tracks back. You see Wayne Rooney putting tackles in the left back position, and then he also scores goals and creates chances. So the effort's certainly there. So I really wouldn't mind Wayne being captain. And when, like I mentioned, Gary Cahill is the second favourite with the bookies to be England captain, and I can't see that happening. Cahill is one of the first names on the team sheet, definitely, but he's a relatively new player to international football. He doesn't have a huge amount of experience, hasn't been to too many tournaments. He's not somebody I would reliably go straight away there's your captain sort of. And sorry, got a bit of a sore throat today, as you can probably tell. Let's have a little bit of a sup of tea. You can't beat a good cup of tea, that's what I always say. But Gary Cahill again, good player, probably wouldn't want him to be captain. The only other player I can realistically see challenging Wayne Rooney for this England captaincy is Joe Hart. And Joe Hart has been England's #1 now for a good amount of time. He's clearly the best goalkeeper in the country. I mean, we've got some good goalkeepers. This is one thing England have always had, is a good goalkeeper. If you look all the way back throughout our history, going back to Gordon Banks, like I mentioned, Peter Shilton, our most all-capped player of all time is a goalkeeper. So that's always a good indication of how good these players are. People like David Seaman. Now we've got Joe Hart. We've got Ben Foster as a backup keeper, and you saw when Ben Foster actually played in that Costa Rica game, some of the saves he pulled off, and his distribution's nice, good shot stopper, decent under the high ball. We're never short of good goalkeepers, and I think Hart is definitely our best goalkeeper, and he's got something about him. He's not the standard, grey man. He's got a bit of charisma. He's got a bit of personality. I can always remember in that penalty shootout against Italy when he was dancing on his line and laughing, smiling, pulling funny faces at the opposition. They're basically doing what Tim Krul did when he got brought on for the Dutch in that penalty shootout. And it nearly worked. Unfortunately, we had Andrea Pirlo against us, who just took that unbelievable penalty and restored the Italians' belief. And again, we went out on penalties. We never normally get beaten in tournaments. We always seem to crash out on penalties, unfortunately. But Joe Hart's definitely got something about him. When you pick an England captain, you have to pick somebody who's going to play pretty much every game. And again, Joe Hart's a player who will fall into that category. So out of those two, if it was Wayne Rooney or Joe Hart, I'd be quite happy, to be honest. Either of them would do a decent job as England captain, I feel. But replacing Steven Gerrard on the pitch, I think is going to be a little bit easier than replacing him as captain. Gerrard has been a fine player for us, but there's no doubt over the last couple of seasons his influence has slowly begun to wane. I never thought I'd actually say this, but Steven Gerrard was our worst player at the World Cup as well. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and it was a big shame. It really was a big shame. If we'd actually got to the quarterfinals, Steven Gerrard would have been our most capped outfield player, and then it would have been a good time for him to sign off. A promising tournament, most capped outfield player, and he could have gone on from there. But unfortunately, the fates conspired, so that wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to happen. We didn't score the goals. We had chances, but we didn't take our chances, and at the end of the day we went out. And we've got some young players to come in and hopefully fill the role. I'm still waiting for Jack Wilshere to not have an injury. This is the problem with Jack Wilshere. He's played a decent amount of international football now. He's had big performances against Brazil. He's had big performances against other major nations where he's really stepped up, and people have said that was a world-class performance from Jack Wilshere. But he needs to be consistent. If we can have Jack Wilshere at Arsenal for the next 2 seasons without a major injury, getting plenty of game time under his belt, he's going to be playing with all these world-class players now who are coming in, the Alexis Sanchez's, the Ozils. There's going to be more players brought into Arsenal, no doubt at all. And Wilshere will hopefully benefit from that and come on, because he's definitely got the potential. If he just gets a bit of game time, then Wilshere can be a core part of our England midfield. And then if you look at players alongside him, I think Jordan Henderson's done pretty well in the England shirt. It was a big ask for him to come in, first major tournament, after only really having a season and a half of very solid football at Liverpool. Because, don't forget, young kid, bought for a lot of money from Sunderland by Kenny Dalglish, had a lot of stick in his first few seasons at Liverpool, and Brendan Rodgers has slowly brought him on and on and on. And he's getting to a point now where I think he's a very, very good player. So that Wilshere-Henderson partnership in midfield could potentially work. We've also got players like Ross Barkley, don't forget. Very, very talented young midfielder. So in that position, I don't think we're going to be under too many stresses and strains. We can definitely make something work there. And that's a little bit of a reassuring thing because, like I mentioned, Gerrard has been a huge player for us. So fingers crossed one of these guys can step into the breach and fill that hole, because this is a really important time for English football now. It can go one or two ways. We can either completely fade and be an also-ran nation, or we can try and kickstart something and give us a chance to be competitive. And a big part of that will be the new captain and the new midfield partnership and all of these players. Because Frank Lampard's almost certainly going to retire. Ashley Cole's gone. All of a sudden, this is all of that past generation gone, and this is a completely fresh start with the Luke Shaws, with the Barkleys, with the Wilshires, the Hendersons, the Sturridges, all of these players that have been talked about. So we do need a little bit of a ray of hope a bit of brightness in our day for a change, and a new England captain and a youthful team doing well in the qualifiers will hopefully be the first step with all of the reforms the FA need to do, obviously. But all of that together will hopefully move us in to the right direction. So that's enough talking about Steven Gerrard in England. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is a little bit about the Spanish League, because at the start of this transfer window, and as soon as the World Cup finished, everybody moved on to the transfer window as the most interesting thing going on at the moment from a football point of view. And the one thing that has really been apparent is the absolute fortune being spent in Spain on these world-class attacking players. I mean, Luis Suarez has gone to Barcelona, and I'm not sure if he's called James Rodriguez or James Rodriguez, because I've heard lots of people call him both. So I'm just going to call him James. So James Rodriguez, pretty much guaranteed now to sign for Real Madrid. I was watching Sky Sports News earlier. He's having a medical at the local hospital in Madrid, where all of their players go and have their medicals. It's rumoured that it's going to be an €80 million fee, which I think is about £63 million. So big money. That'll make him technically the fourth highest, most expensive player. Get my words out. The fourth most expensive player of all time. But in reality, he's the fifth, because Neymar isn't on that list. You know, it's obviously Bale, it's Ronaldo, it is Suarez, and then they say it's Rodriguez as the fourth. But people don't think about Neymar that actually Barcelona spent millions and millions on his family and accommodation and flying all of his family out to Spain and housing them. That actually added several million on top of that. So in reality, Neymar is more expensive than James Rodriguez is going to be. But, you know, the official stats say Rodriguez is the fourth most expensive. And when you actually look at the absolute powerhouse of the strike force of Barcelona and Madrid now, because you've basically got Suarez, Messi and Neymar as the front three for Barcelona up against the front four of Benzema, Ronaldo, Bale and Rodriguez for Madrid, and those are just insane teams. And don't forget as well, Madrid signed Toni Kroos in midfield, absolutely fantastic player, really, really good player. So the two top teams in Spain are strengthening, and this is what I really wanted to talk about. You know, is it now that Spain are going to be pushing forward and having their time of dominance? Obviously, Madrid, they won the Champions League. There was an all-Spanish final between Atletico and Real Madrid. And, you know, Pep Guardiola is doing his best to take Bayern Munich backwards. English football are the Man Cities, the Manchester Uniteds, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Chelseas. They haven't got realistically close to challenging for a title in a while. You know, the only Champions League England has won in recent times was that Chelsea win, when that was incredibly lucky. That was just one of those things where all the stars aligned. They had all the luck in the world to get through to that final and win, and that wasn't because Chelsea were the best team. It was because they battled and because they had a large slice of luck, which is what you need. You can't take that victory away from Chelsea. Their name is on the trophy, their name's in the record books, and if you win a Champions League, you thoroughly deserve it. You definitely deserve it. There's no luck, there's no bad teams who win the Champions League. It just doesn't happen. But in the grand scheme of things, that Chelsea team that won that Champions League isn't going to be remembered as one of the great teams in the world. And this is what I'm trying to say. Has it now gone past the point where the teams in the Premier League are no longer the great teams of world football? Because if you have a look, like the Moscow final between United and Chelsea, those were two unbelievable sides. They really were very, very good teams. But it just seems now that all of the best teams in the world are no longer in England. And I still think the Premier League is the best league, because for a league to be good, you've got to have the quality, but you've also got to have the competition. And this is why I really dislike the Spanish league, because you've got two unbelievable teams in Barcelona and Real Madrid. Then you've got a very, very good team in Atletico. Then you've got like a couple of teams like Valencia who are okay. And then you've got the rest of the league is just complete dross. And that isn't good. And don't forget, in Spain as well, you've got Barcelona and Real Madrid who are incredibly, fantastically wealthy, and then you've got every other club in there sliding towards bankruptcy. Which it's because Barcelona and Madrid hoover so much money up out of that league, the rest of the league is in dire financial trouble because of it, and you cannot claim that's the best league in the world. And again, looking at the German league, the German league is, I think, better than the Spanish league. I think the Premier League's the best league, and then the German league's the Spanish league is better than the Spanish league, because they have higher attendances, they have good competition, they've got a number of very, very talented teams. They always seem to do well in major tournaments. You know, if you look at Dortmund, there was a Dortmund-Bayern final not too long ago. Bayern, arguably the best team in the world, still very, very good side. So you could argue that, but in terms of like the best 5 teams in the world, if we were to sit down, everybody, and make a list of the best 5 teams in the world, I don't think many English teams would feature on many people's lists. I really don't. And this is a little bit of a problem now. Has our first competitive advantage gone now from the Premier League? Because what made the Premier League so good, and what makes it so good, is the money. The TV deals are absolutely astronomical, and what it enabled us to do, and what it enabled English clubs to do, was outcompete everybody in wages. Because Manchester City, the Chelseas, the Man Uniteds, they got more money than pretty much anybody else, and they could go out and spend silly money on signing Sergio Aguero and paying him all of this money. Or, you know, say, oh, the team's struggling a bit, let's just buy Robin van Persie and offer him all this money to help us fire us to the league, etc. That competitive advantage has sort of gone now, because when you look at teams like PSG, or if you look at teams like Monaco, or now like Real Madrid, Barcelona, the spending these teams are doing is eclipsing anything we've seen in a long, long time. And you know, the Premier League is spending big as well, but in terms of pure quality of players, I still think the Spanish League are getting the better end of the bargain here. So this is a little bit of a worrying thing for me, because we're at a point now with English football where we're saying that the Premier League is a massive asset for us because it's so competitive in this, but we're at a point where it's damaging our national team, and now we're at a stage where it seems like the very best players aren't coming to the Premier League anymore, they're going elsewhere. So this is what I'm going to put to you. Is this now a big problem for the Premier League, that all of a sudden all of our competitive advantages have gone, and the thing that makes the Premier League so special perhaps is on the decline? You know, is this an actual thing? Is this really going to happen? And that's what I wanted to ask you guys. You know, do you think it's the beginning of the end for the Premier League, or are we still going to see the Premier League be one of the strongest, if not the strongest league in the world for a long, long time? So guys, once again, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed it. A lot of things covered there. As always, it'd be really, really interesting in hearing what you have to say. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great